English translation, 882nd contact, Sunday, the 31st of March, 2024, 8:18 hours.
Hello, Ptah. You are back quite quickly, my dear friend.
Yes, that is so. But greetings, Edward, my friend. Quetzal, Bermunda, and Jana and Florina endeavored to have me come here with them, because they want to—
I know that, but be welcome as always. And as you know, I do not mind the time when you come, because your coming is always fine with me, and I am always mobile.
Of course.
If you, Quetzal, and Jana, Bermunda, and Florina came here the day before yesterday, and we— But no one needs to know that. Consequently, I will leave it out and not mention it when I call up our conversation, which is supposed to be this time, right?
Yes.
Exactly. Although I am always happy when one of you comes here, because I can always have a good chat with all of you, but unfortunately I am not always in the office, so I have to look around the house. So it happens that people knock on the door when I am talking to someone in the kitchen or living room, for example, and I am then called into the office. Recently you have all discovered that you can call me from the office by telephone, which at first seemed a bit strange to our people, because, for example, calls are made from my office or from Eva's to the kitchen or the parlor, although Eva and I are not over there, but in the kitchen or elsewhere, and therefore the offices are locked. But the phone number shown in the telephone set proves that calls are still being made from these offices to Eva's or my phone.
It sometimes happens that you are not present in the workroom when one of us comes in, which is why we have to look for you first, which is where the call machine comes in handy.
You could also call elsewhere as usual.
To that end, we have decided that we will only do that now if you do not get our attention from a knock or the speaking apparatus, because after all, a certain amount of effort with the—
That is not worth mentioning. But discussing this is probably superfluous. Besides, I think it goes beyond the understanding of human beings on Earth, because ashen fantasies prevail about all these things, which are still very far removed from reality, so I think it is absolutely pointless to say anything about it. The secret services in particular are experimenting in this direction, but so far they have only done more harm than good, and have not got the hang of it. They simply always do things that are wrong and therefore not correct, in many cases in research, but also in everything and everyone, especially in politics, which leads to war and murder. This is currently being proven once again in Ukraine and the Middle East, where senseless and criminal murder and destruction is taking place, just as everything is also going wrong all over the world as a result of humanity's misguided actions. And this is not only happening in individual cases, but also in general through everything and anything that is done. Masses of human beings are being murdered by military forces, all of which are absolutely murderous organizations in every country around the world, sanctioned by the respective states, as is also the murderous organization NATO, which will have been in existence for around 75 years in the next few days. This will probably be a reason for their loud-mouthed supreme leaders to celebrate and to praise themselves for their bloody and murderous handiwork and the misery and destruction they bring. After all, the military are nothing but murderers, and they are also murderers when they act according to orders and kill, as in wars, or when they kill human beings in any other way. It is a proven fact that war has never brought peace, because since time immemorial it has only been a forced state of truce due to the victory of a warring party, and it was and is also today nothing more than an alternate state rule that must be handed over from the losers to the victors. There is not even a tiny fiber of peace, but only ruling gavolt and oppression by the victors, who as such dictate and enforce whatever they want. This is in addition to the fact that, as a rule, the leaders and their satellites and supporters of the vanquished are murdered because they are given the death penalty by the victors and thus promoted from life to death. In fact, there is not even a semblance of peace, but only a state of dubious truce after the war victory, which can only be maintained with drastic violence and laws that restrict freedom, as well as rules, regulations, etc. So there is no question of real peace. So there can be no question of real peace, let alone freedom, because everything continues to threaten that it will break out again. That uprisings, popular discontent and rebellion will rise up, and that there will be plots against the victors, resulting in new acts of war if they slacken in their violence and become careless. Now, there is never an excuse me for killing human beings, because it is and remains murder one way or another, and also when it is done by order in war or in the form of capital punishment, etc., or in a mania for revenge or religion. This is also the case, for example, when it is carried out by mad murderers, homicidal maniacs and religious maniacs, as happened a few days ago in Moscow by primitive sectarians, that is to say IS maniacs, whereby around 150 human beings, including children, were simply gunned down who were peacefully attending a concert performance by a rock band. These mass murderers, all members or other fellow travelers of the fanatical religious terrorists of the Islamic State, who will now once again take action worldwide, especially against Christians and Jews and their achievements, which will be as inevitable as war, and its excesses therefore never bring peace, and war turns the military into mass murderers, because after the first shot and killing of a human being, where there may have been hesitation and thought beforehand as to whether to shoot and kill, all knowledge has already evaporated and killing has become a habit. As a result, people no longer think, they just act and kill for all they are worth, completely without conscience and without feeling. But all the talk about this is useless, so I would better talk about something else. Now summer is coming, and I can see that at least nature is also waking up again, and a lot is beginning to stir, despite the fact that the huge mass of Earthlings is destroying more than it is bringing to life. The damage is based on the destruction of ecosystems, almost all of nature and its fauna and flora, and even largely on their complete extinction, but also on the destruction of human achievements. And this is not only caused by wars and other armed conflicts and by revenge, wantonness and arrogance, as well as by irresponsibility and sheer idiocy, but also by ignorance and effective stupidity and know-it-all behavior. And from these idiots, who are addicted to stupidity, bogus thinking and know-it-all attitude, who have settled in the authorities for the most part and do nothing but exercise their might, everything is done to cause a great deal of destruction, annihilation, and extermination. This, just as idiotic bans also prevent plants of all kinds from living and thriving, from the smallest plant to giant trees that are, or should be, planted because they allegedly do not fit into the landscape, or because they are alien and are consistently labeled as invasive or invading and invading neophytes. Neophytes simply means that the plants are alien. But contrary to the lies and fanaticism of neophyte opponents, this has no negative impact on other genera and species, biotopes, or also biotic communities. Only invasive neophytes are characterized by the displacement of native species from their habitats, that is to say by proliferation. However, these are really only individual genera and species, so not all neophytes can be labeled as invasive, that is to say proliferating, that is to say invading and invading. However, if this is nevertheless claimed, then it corresponds to a lie, a fraud, or simply a delusion against foreign things, as is unfortunately the case with many governments and members of the authorities as well as trained foresters and gardeners, who knowingly order the prevention and prohibition of planting of flowers, herbs, bushes and trees, etc., as zoologists also do with regard to animals, creatures, and other self-moving life forms. This is despite the fact that they should actually know that since nature came to life through life forms of all genera and species, plants as well as many animals, creatures, and other life forms, these have spread independently all over the world through the unstoppable change of nature. And they did this independently everywhere, namely where life and their existence was naturally possible for them, without the autocratic human being regulating the course of nature. So if, due to any circumstances, plants or their seeds, creatures, animals, or other self-moving life forms moved from one place to another where they could also exist and live, then this happened absolutely naturally. Of course, this means that the plants or their seeds were carried and spread by the wind, animals, creatures, or other life forms, and also by human beings. Just as many animals, birds, creatures, and many other genera and species of self-moving life forms migrate individually or in flocks from their ancestral territories and settle elsewhere, even in distant foreign lands, and become native. It is natural and normal that this also brings usury plants or that their seeds are spread by the wind, but human beings can counteract this by containing or eradicating them. However, this in no wise means that all neophytes should be labeled and treated as invasive, that is to say, proliferating, invading, and invading, because the truth is that there are very few that are really invasive, and so proliferating that they displace and, so to speak, eradicate other plants. The vast majority, however, that are demonized by governments, authorities, and alien plant haters are harmless genera and species of plants that neither displace nor eradicate others. This applies equally to all kinds of genera and species of animals, birds, creatures, and many other living beings, which generally only cause damage when human beings, through their machinations of all kinds as a result of the huge mass of their overpopulation, nonsensically do everything they can to ensure that this damage must inevitably and unavoidably occur. For example, the habitat of wild animals is increasingly being cut back and taken away, and huge herds of sheep are filling the pastures and meadows, attracting predators that then prey on these animals. All this while the many hunting organizations shoot their prey, such as roe deer, capercaillie, hares, badgers, and many other wild animals that are normally hunted and killed by wolves and eagles, etc., and this is done under the hypocritical guise of game conservation and the preservation of wildlife. However, the idiots of this degeneracy do not want to admit that this not only disrupts the course and existence of nature, but also turns it into a sow and destroys it, and it is even regulated by all governments and authorities through corresponding laws, licenses, and regulations, etc. As a result, however, human beings are gradually, as they have been doing for centuries, irrevocably destroying and eradicating all of nature and its fauna and flora, as has happened in all countries on Earth with countless genera and species of plants, animals, birds, creatures, fish, snakes, and other life forms, and if at the present time around 60,000 genera and species of plants, animals, birds, creatures, fish, and other living beings are being wiped out for good every year through the fault of human beings, then this should give us pause for thought, and the necessary steps should be taken to prevent it. But the human beings of Earth would rather indulge in their crazy belief in something imaginary and in money, pleasure, and it is none of my business than truly think for themselves and act responsibly and do the correct thing. But what the heck? Because this hatred and aversion to foreign plants, birds, animals, and creatures, as well as all other life forms in nature, does not only refer to them, but also to human beings themselves, which also includes racial hatred and hatred of religion, in respect of which murder, war, revenge, hatred, and retribution have prevailed between peoples and human beings since time immemorial. What the Spaniards did in South America alone when they brought Christianity to the indigenous people there, with war, slaughter, and other murder, was more than just monstrous and an unparalleled genocide, which was only surpassed by the fanaticism of the Muslims through the Arab-Byzantine wars from about 630 to 720 or so, and also by all the wars of the Crusaders, whose crusades were sanctioned by the Latin Church, whose activities were religiously and economically motivated, and took place between 1095 and 1099, as well as in the 13th century. They were actually directed against the Muslim states in the Middle East, and also aimed at the conquest of Jerusalem. The Crusades were also primarily aimed at spreading and defending the Christian faith, with the aim of pushing back the Muslim sphere of influence through murder. Then there was the First World War, which America fought from 1756 to 1763, the Wars of Independence. But then there were also the American Indian Wars, the Spanish-American War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Gulf Wars, all of which America was responsible for. Then there was the Second World War, which was triggered by the Sarajevo assassination, when the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Franz Ferdinand, and his wife were shot by a nationalist Serb on the 28th of June 1914. Then came the Third World War, which was also triggered in Europe by the mad Austrian-born Adolf Hitler, who seized might in Germany and plunged the world into unspeakable misfortune. and this war was caused by a tremendous racial hatred. Religious hatred and xenophobia without equal, above all as a result of an unspeakable hatred of the Jews, and was a war that effectively gripped the whole world. And now a war is raging between Ukraine and Russia, as is also the case in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinians. In Ukraine, two stubborn warmongers named Putin and Zelensky are at work, bringing death and destruction in their enmity. This, while in the Middle East a merciless mass murderer named Netanyahu is willing to carry out a genocide against the Palestinians and will even have helpers from all over the world murdered because he suspects spies among them, who are employed to uncover the many war crimes of the Israeli army of murderers, as if to claim and lie afterwards that it was all just an unfortunate oversight. This is despite the fact that everything was precisely calculated in advance, and the intention was that no more spies, aid workers, etc. would enter the Gaza Strip. This is precisely because Netanyahu wants to carry out genocide, as Quetzal and Bermunda found out when they investigated his mindset and also discovered his secretiveness, that he wants to cash in on Lebanon and Syria and later also Jordan and is not afraid to criminally sting these countries with nasty attacks and raids for the time being. Internationally, the Palestinians are not to receive any more aid, because that does not fit in with Netanyahu's genocide plans, which is why he will secretly arrange for all the Palestinians' helpers to disappear from the Gaza Strip. And thus also the spies he suspects are supposed to uncover all the Israeli war crimes committed by Israel's murderous military, as he assumes. Secretly, donated food is also being poisoned and brought into the Gaza Strip as aid from all over the world, which then kills many Palestinians. But this will make the guilty parties reluctant to investigate. However, this is not being done by Israel, but by completely misguided pro-Israelis who are acting out their unbridled and uncontrollable hatred of the Palestinians and Arabs in general by poisoning the food, and thus allowing food aid to enter the Gaza Strip that is more than just harmful to health. And this is what will happen, but the Israeli people can do nothing about it and is also innocent of all the criminal machinations of war that Netanyahu orders and allows to be carried out by murderous military scum who murder and destroy and cause death, suffering, and misery in the Gaza Strip on his behalf and under his orders. And this is also against the will of the majority of the people of Israel, who do not agree with everything and wish this Netanyahu to hell, demonstrate against him and want him removed from office, which, however, is prevented by Netanyahu's like-minded people in the government by all means. It is like in Hitler's time, when his comrades howled along with him and did everything he demanded, indeed much more, because many lived out their own and personalities' lust for murder, as all of the Israeli military are also doing now, the ground troops as well as those in the Air Force, who murder, rape and destroy without hesitation and in accordance with their lust for murder, for which they are praised to the skies by the stupid people of the world who do not care about the truth, while they see and treat the Palestinians as animals who should simply be slaughtered. Partisanship is just as prevalent here as it is in the Ukraine war, where only the Russian murderer army and Putin are made a pig of, while Zelensky and his Ukrainian murderer army are praised to the skies and given weapons and ammunition. Just as America also supplies weapons etc. to Israel, so that Netanyahu can realize his genocide plans. America cannot get as close to Arabia as it would like. Palestinians are Arabs, so America is not exactly on the best of terms with them. The same also applies to Russia, which has always successfully resisted the delusion of American hegemony, and consequently uses every opportunity to work against Russia in every nasty, underhanded and mean way so as not to come to the fore too much, so that the world does not realize where Bartholomeus is getting the most. This is why America is also sneakily and cunningly nodding in Ukraine, and stuffing Zelensky with weapons and money in order to get close to Russia in this wise way, to keep it down and one day incorporate it into America's hegemony. And the lowly intelligent and simple-minded, who only engage in bogus thinking because they are somehow believers and therefore incapable of thinking about it, take all the lies and deceit at face value. They pick on one side with bias and demonize it through and through, while the other side is given a halo and lifted to the heavens, even though it is not one iota better than those who are hated and demonized. The fact that both sides are committing the most serious war crimes, if it is a matter of war, is conveniently overlooked by the partisanship and only the side that simply appears sympathetic and is declared to be good and correct by propaganda from very special and biased sympathizers or profiteers. And all the lowly, intelligent, and simple-minded fall for this false propaganda, because in their sick, illusory thinking, they are unable to grasp logic and do not even understand what logic is, although they use this term all the time. So they do not even understand, also when they adorn themselves with professorial titles, etc., that the term logic basically only means truth and reality. So let me explain the following. As I learnt it from Svath when I was a boy, logic means that the structure, that is to say form of the thing, is always related to truthful and realistic and consequential thinking. That is to say, based on truth and reality. Consequently, logic means consistency, consequence, lack of gaps, comprehensibility, conclusiveness, truth, and therefore reality. Logic is always and in every case about clearly demonstrating truth and reality and their validity. That is to say, not about creating a judgment through analytical thinking, as is erroneously assumed and claimed. The more logically or truthfully and therefore more realistically a human being observes, perceives, hears, thinks, and ponders, the better he will be able to grasp the entire complexity of the interrelationships and to see, grasp, and also understand what corresponds to what is effective. This makes it much easier to find a correct and valuable solution to a problem situation that arises, and to do so with certainty and speed. Bold. Because if a human being's brain is logical in its thinking and therefore orientated towards truth and reality and works and functions correctly according to these values, then we can speak of logic.
This is well explained and equally well understood. Consequently, it can also be comprehended.
You are probably calling out too soon on that one, because I think our know-it-alls will tear my explanation to shreds and insult it in such a way that logic is something completely different from what I have just made clear.
That is not what I want you to take offense at. But with regard to what you said earlier about those Earth's humanity who are biased in their attitude because of their faith, I can only say that unfortunately the majority of Earth's humanity is so unjust and biased, and this is because they are believers and not capable of independent thought. As a result, religious hatred, xenophobia, and racial hatred flare up in them, and they are unable to confront the truth, but their faith is such that they can let it work on its own. Through his faith, regardless of whether it is religious or worldly, Earth's humanity has forcibly adopted a pseudo-scheme of thought that does not allow him and makes it absolutely impossible for him to comprehend a thing, a moment or a topic in such a way that the meaning and value of the whole can be grasped, understood, and accepted as realization of the form of meaning as reality, that is to say, truth. Unfortunately, as we have established through our explorations of Earth's humanity's attitudes and illusory ways of thinking, this is not comprehensible in any wise for human beings who really think for themselves.
It is for the human being of Earth, so to speak, something that has 7 seals for him and which he cannot vomit, which is why everything remains incomprehensible to him.
That is exactly what I want to say. Because the majority of Earth's humanity lives with a self-accustomed illusory thinking scheme, which makes it absolutely impossible for him to understand this, as well as the comprehension possibility and realization possibility to put something into action. And this happens because Earth's humanity is unable to grasp the acceptance of effective understanding, and also the comprehension of the real and its necessary and actual application, and is therefore unable to carry it out.
That is indeed so, but what you say and explain is unfortunately something like bohemian, that is to say incomprehensible for very many Earthlings, which is why it is probably pointless to try to explain this in more detail. I have already learnt from your father Svath that, on the contrary, shouting is effective and creates understanding. This is what happens when a roar is let out or roared instead of spoken calmly, that the illusory thinking scheme of the human beings of Earth opens up, or the human being somehow realizes that there is more than just simple talk behind everything, but something that is more profound and thus also to be understood further than schematic thinking. Through the roar, a blockade is released, so to speak, so that the schema thinking, which only corresponds to illusory thinking, is broken through, and space is made for understanding and correct thinking.
You really know how to explain things.
That is also my task and duty.
Of course, and it is always absolute.
Of course, that is always the case, and also for the individual human beings as a collective. But I have something else to say, namely that the whole war in Ukraine and especially in the Middle East is contributing to the Jewish people suffering and being persecuted once again, even though they wish the mass murderer Netanyahu to hell and want nothing to do with him. This murderer, who acts like a second Hitler and, like him, emulates him in his attitude, acts like all other warmongers and war supporters contrary to everything that is written in the Torah and the Bible, namely, "Thou shalt not kill." And what I have learned from your father Sfath, I know that the hatred against everything foreign, and therefore also the racial hatred and the hatred of religion as well as the hatred of foreigners, already arose before the time of Christianity, and therefore murder and manslaughter were spread, and even wars were waged. These were the so-called Diadochi Wars, around the years 325 to about 300 before Emmanuel, as well as about 305 or so before Emmanuel the Babylonian War. But the Earthlings have learnt nothing from this. Besides, everything is in the past and therefore no longer important, which is why the lowly intelligent believers and bigoted rulers are also of the mistaken opinion that everything can be regulated over time by the security forces, with bans, weapons, and wars by the murderous military within a framework that will stop terror all over the world. Such crazy, illusory ideas are harbored both by religious believers and by the same kind of religious believers in government who only do their job in government for the sake of their might and the big bucks, but never ever do the correct thing. On the contrary, they constantly issue new regulations, ordinances, and laws and bully the people more and more, leaving the citizens worse off in this respect than they were at the time of the bailiffs. Today, as the people and the rulers elected from among them wield the scepter, these and those decrees and laws, etc., are devised by rulers who even restrict the citizens' freedom to breathe.
As I am engaged in getting my bearings on this, I have come to the realization that your exposition does indeed correspond to what you say. My comparisons, which I overlook, of how everything was in those days when Reeves ruled the roost compared to how things are today, is frightening. Instead of a free order, today a dictatorship of laws, decrees, regulations, and orders prevails, whereby the peoples are unfree and prisoners of the state. Thus devised and directed by the peoples themselves, who rose up against themselves and imperiously abused and continue to abuse their might. This in order to do what you rightly denounce, namely that the peoples in their lust for power raged worse than the bailiffs did. And in the same framework they now continue to act. For the lust for power of individuals who get into governments, live out their fantasies of their might and enact new decrees, restricting the freedom of human beings more and more, and leading to,
inevitably, one fine day there will be an explosion, which will then destroy everything at ground level.
that will be the future.
Yes, I know that. But if you do not mind, I want to open the door right now, because I was asked what the correct level of oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere is. Can you tell me about this? As I looked it up on the internet, the following is said by earthly scientists.
Pure dry air has approximately the following composition in volume percent. In layers of the atmosphere near the ground: 78% nitrogen, 20.94% oxygen, 0.93% argon, 0.04% carbon dioxide. Other noble gases and components together make up significantly less than 1% global monitoring laboratory.
In addition to this, I also noticed something on TV together with Eva, namely that the so-called Havana syndrome is now apparently occurring more frequently. If you can explain to me where this comes from or what the cause is, because we have not found an explanation.
First of all, the earthly measuring devices used to determine these results are very rudimentary and inaccurate, because according to our very precise investigations and measurements that we recently fathomed, these data are very flawed, and furthermore, the oxygen content is extremely poor and completely insufficient for Earth's humanity's breathing and health. If we assess the oxygen requirements of Earth's humanity according to the inadequate values of the faulty apparatus, that is to say, measuring devices used in this regard, then an oxygen content of around 25.3% in the atmosphere would actually be required for Earth's humanity at present. However, this value is not only far below the required level, but is also dangerous for Earth humans, as the other gaseous substances floating mixed in the Earth's humanity are corrosive and damage the respiratory organs. As a result, there will be a very strong increase in respiratory diseases in the future, which will become so frequent and cause so much suffering that many Earth's human beings will no longer be able to lead and cope with their lives in a normal, wise manner. The same applies to the Havana syndrome you mentioned, which is also caused by the poisoned atmosphere and the lack of oxygen in it. This involves symptoms such as nausea, hearing loss, and strange, pulsating headaches, as well as dizziness, balance problems, and sleep disorders. Respiratory illnesses and Havana syndrome will increase and intensify in the coming period as the levels of oxygen and toxic gases in the atmosphere continue to deteriorate.
I know that because I have talked to Svath to the whole thing, though. I wonder to what extent the mass of overpopulation also plays a certain role in this. I am not thinking of human beings breathing themselves, but of their machinations, through which I think the atmosphere is being affected.
In this respect, this role is really very big, because the machinations resulting from overpopulation and the dwindling stability of Earth's humanity's body and its effeminacy are contributing to a steady increase in susceptibility to certain diseases. However, this also expands the risk of spreading germs in the atmosphere.
So there will be a more direct worsening correlation in the future with the low oxygen levels in the atmosphere becoming more and more detrimental, if I understand correctly.
Yes, if it is done, that Earth's humanity will create a direct, stronger, growing influence whereby the atmosphere will become even more damaged and impregnated with toxins than it already is and disease spreading.
That is a clear answer, but now with this letter here with the questions, I want to continue our conversation. They are actually questions put forward by a man, mister, and he comes to me with the inquiry as to how it was possible for our astronomy to find out how our solar system came into being. But I cannot explain anything or not much about that. Only that I learned from Svath in the 1940s that our astronomical scientists will claim something fundamentally wrong. Because our solar system was formed completely differently than our astronomers will claim. But I should keep quiet about that because...
It is probably appropriate that you keep quiet about that because your remarks will not only...
I also think so, because the know-it-all attitude of the... Besides, Svath said that the scientists dealing with the matter themselves will one day realize that their fanciful assumptions are wrong, and that they have to revise them. This means that they have to correct their fantasy findings in such a wise way that the origin of our solar system is V. But here's another question in the letter, which once again refers to the UFOs, namely why the military, that is to say their air forces, shoot at the UFOs, since they do not defend themselves and simply disappear when they are shot at. They also ask how it is with us, that everything is still being monitored with regard to UFOs, and whether the occupants of these are not as advanced as you, Playarin, and also whether the UFOnauts, as they call them, really do not know anything about your anchor universe, since you do not let them locate you.
The fact that the air forces of various states attack the UFOs with weapons and intend to shoot them down is, as you yourself once mentioned, absolutely ridiculous. Because their technology is so futuristic, this seen by Earth's humanity, that the occupants of the objects do not have to defend themselves but simply avoid the projectiles and move away. With surveillance, the whole thing is a thing in itself, because if this is considered, then it is just as ridiculous as also shooting at UFOs.
And the disappearance of the UFOs happens in such a flash that the fighter pilots are genuinely perplexed each time. And the surveillance and spying here in the center does not help anyway, because your technology causes the entire earthly technology to fail, and you cannot even be located with an iota.
Our technology is so far superior to Earth's that no comparison is possible, while it is also much more highly developed than that of the foreigners, namely that of the sonars in the DAL universe, as it were, who emigrated there as our distant ancestors, and also developed rapidly in every wise, that is to say technically, from which we Playaran could and can benefit. As a result, we together have the same level of technical development, which is much higher than that of the UFOnauts, as they are called by, which also gives us the security of being able to protect ourselves against them in every wise, and also prevent any possibility of technical tracking of any kind. So we also have the knowledge and the certain knowledge that the foreigners, the UFOnauts, have no knowledge of the DAL sister creation and our anchor universe of our creation.
Apparently, if I may assume, these foreigners do not even have knowledge of the fact that our creation does not only consist of one universe, but harbors within itself 7 universes in 7 different dimensions, which flow into each other without being tangent to each other and exist in this form. They are obviously no smarter and more knowledgeable in this respect, despite their high level of technical development, than all our earthly know-it-alls, greats and scientists who deal with these areas of knowledge.
This corresponds exactly to our realization, as also that the technical development of the foreigners is very highly developed, but nevertheless so inferior to ours that they may well vomit other dimensions, but they cannot penetrate other creation universes, and therefore cannot penetrate their dimensions. Consequently, they are only able, if at all, to switch to other time dimensions in this universe, to those of the past, present, and future, and also to move within them. But they cannot in any wise, according to our knowledge, penetrate into the other 6 creation dimensions, that is to say, into the other creation universes of the 7 universes, each with its own dimension containing creation.
So the foreigners, or just the occupants of the UFOs, should also have no knowledge in this regard that creation holds within itself 7 dimensions with 7 different universes. Consequently, they also have no knowledge of your Ankar universe, which should also remain so.
Which is also to remain so, which is why we are strict that our presence cannot be detected or elicited by the foreigners with their UFOs, however and wherever we move in this darn universe. And of great importance to us and our safety is how and where we come into this darn universe, as well as how and where we can get back to our anchor universe.
This applies not only to the foreigners, that is to say the occupants of the UFOs, but also to the earthly military, who are more powerful and have, or take, more rights than the respective governments have. It is also idiotic heads of the military, together with equally idiotic rulers, who irresponsibly supply weapons and ammunition to Zelensky and also to Netanyahu and Hamas, whereby the vicious and inhuman, senseless and irresponsible murder, the primitive destruction, and thus the acts of war continue. And this is happening against all religious beliefs of the military leaders and government louts of both sexes, who, full of hatred, partisanship, revenge, retribution, and religious mania, allow their military, secret services, etc., to murder and destroy by order and force. This is completely contrary to what their religious beliefs dictate, namely that they should not kill, which also absolutely includes killing on command, as it is anchored in the 10 recommendations of Christians and Jews, such as in the Bible, in Genesis 2 verse 13, "Thou shalt not kill," as it is also written in the Torah X. 20.1 to 17, "Thou shalt not murder." The Bible also states in Genesis 9:6, "Whoever sheds the blood of human beings, his blood shall also be shed by human beings." Religious belief tacitly ignores the fact that this fundamentally contradicts the "thou shalt not kill." Just as all military personnel, rulers, and secret services, as well as judges who impose the death penalty and other murderers of all kinds, also ignore the "thou shalt not kill." And what these idiots in the military and in government are provoking, and what they will also cause in the future with regard to all arms deliveries and ammunition supplies for the war in Ukraine and the war in the Middle East, is something that all these idiotic, stupid, and non-thinking arms and ammunition suppliers from around 50 countries can neither guess nor foresee. This also applies to the idiots who curse and rant in a partisan and racist manner, hating one country or another and full of hatred and revenge tirades, shouting for one government figure or another and wishing death and the devil on those who hate them.
This is unfortunately pronounced and common among Earth's human beings of both sexes who are addicted to a vile and uncontrollable self-importance and an exuberant megalomania, as well as an indomitable hatred of human beings who harbor their own thoughts and perform or cause to be performed actions contrary to any personal view of the self-important and megalomaniacal person. Such human beings are actually psychopaths, but they hide their true character traits on the outside and pretend to be educated and helpful.
Psychopaths. Unfortunately, they are represented en masse in the governments of all countries. These are human beings who, if they really are full psychopaths, are burdened by severe personality disorders and are afflicted with extreme forms of this, and are also characterized by aggressive, antisocial, criminal, and very manipulative behavior. They can be charming and eloquent, they are effectively unscrupulous, and they can pursue their goals without any ifs or buts, with no remorse or guilt tormenting them later. Their thinking is like that of a predator, but they know exactly how to distinguish between right and wrong. Also, when they disregard it, take advantage of others, or even harm their lives, etc., the human beings are therefore those who have affective and interpersonal deficits. The psychopaths are human beings who are extremely manipulative and behave unscrupulously towards those around them. They do not shy away from cheating and lying, nor from unscrupulously taking advantage of their fellow human beings. While they often behave violently, irresponsibly, and risk-taking, they tend not to be the brightest in terms of intelligentum. Unsuccessful psychopaths lack empathy and are unpredictable, without love, lowly intelligent, fearless, impulsive, aggressive, unscrupulous, selfish, ruthless, and without a sense of guilt, exhibit antisocial behavior and are not afraid to take the risk of committing acts of violence. Hence, there is a constant sense of danger. Psychopaths exhibit significantly low brain activity, as Svath explained to me.
My father taught you a lot.
Indeed he did, but sometimes I would rather not know so much. This especially about many things that are meant to be kept quiet.
That, yes, I can understand that.
Yes, that is so and cannot be changed. But here I have another mail with the following question.
What do you or the Playaran think about a person who claims to receive advanced medical information from the Spirit of Compassion in real time? Yours sincerely, Mississippi.
To this, I will just briefly respond as follows. All round, this is absolutely just rubbish from a human being who is a bogus thinker. More, I think, is probably not necessary to say.
There is also nothing more to say to that.
Exactly. Here's something else from Jose in Brazil.
Dear friend Billy, the Palestinian child. Here are 2 photos attached. Note: unfortunately, a second photo cannot be copied. Yazan Kafana after his hunger death. Val photo. Rabi Abu Nakara. This is not a photo of a mummy or an embalmed body recovered from one of Gaza's ancient cemeteries. Third is a photo of Yazan Kafane, a 9-year-old Palestinian child who died of severe malnutrition during Satan Israel's genocidal war on Gaza. For me, there is no hope left in this world. Humanity is doomed and lost. I am fed up with it all. Planet Earth will not have peace until Israel and the United States of America are wiped off the face of the Earth, having been turned into very fine nuclear dust. The civilization of planet Earth will not achieve perfection and true peace until the last stone of the last church has fallen on the last priest, pastor, bishop, pope, and destroyed them, and planet Earth is completely free of this filthy, lying, miserable, cursed gang of thieves and religious vagabonds of all colours, flags, and denominations enslaving humanity on earth. With deep and immeasurable sadness and disappointment. Please, Billy. Yes, you are authorized. You have my permission to publish my full true name, Jose Barreto Silva, without initial, without abbreviation. Yes, I authorize it. I ask you, please, my friend Billy, as soon as you publish the publication in the Zeitzeichen, also publish my email with the photo of the Palestinian child who died of hunger, in the contact report itself with your conversations with J. Sassy H. Patar, so that the whole world can see it with their own eyes. MQ 28 de Ma. E 2024, 1448. Agita 777. Brazil Agita 156 at Gmail. Com Musk Review. Love and thank you very much. Salome Jose Barreto Silva, Brazil.
Yazan Kafarna, the boy who starved to death in Gaza. JPG Yazan Kafarna before Israel's genocidal war.
The suffering is much more extensive than this single picture is able to convey. And it is all because this or that false and insane religious belief inspires Earth's humanity to enmity and hate, persecute, haram, and murder those of other faiths. Nowhere on Earth can we find independent thinking and the resulting honest and true feelings of joy and sorrow among the majority of religious believers. As we have found out through our research studies and findings, we have not found a single Earth's humanity devoted to religion during the approximately 2,000 years up to the present time, which we have effectively analyzed billions of times, who has not been selfish. Self-serving, selfish, and therefore selfish and only concerned about their own well-being, even to the point of fanatical self-sacrifice and sacrifice of their own lives. Our findings clearly showed that every Earth's humanity of the entire majority of religious believers who had fallen prey to a belief harbored a wide variety of illusory thoughts that outwardly pretended to be something that inwardly corresponded entirely to the opposite. And this has been preserved to this day, not only with regard to all religious beliefs, but in all areas of expression, so that Earth's humanity is in the habit of lying and deceiving and expressing something other than its own opinion, which corresponds to its own effective inner will.
Dear Billy, religion is the true death cancer of the entire planet Earth. Religions and politics together are the true #1 cause of all blood wars. Money, politicians, and religions together are the true engines of all crimes against all creation. The Bible is only used as toilet paper, and for nothing else. Watch below Billy, the low intelligence of the big clown Donald Trumple Mad Dog Trump's Bible. This Mad Dog Trumple Trump has no shame on his face. Best regards, and Salome. Jose Barreto Silva, Brazil.
Now below to the utter insanity of the slaughter-producing United States. The clammy Trump is now selling Bibles for $60, including the U.S. Constitution. The 7th of March, 2024, 15:13 hours ET by Rachel Treisman.
Former President Donald Trump is bringing church and state together in a gold-plated package for his latest project. a $60 God Bless the USA Bible with copies of the nation's founding documents. Trump announced the launch of the leather-bound, large-print King James Bible in a post on Truth Social on Tuesday, a day after the social media company saw its stock price soar in its stock market debut, and 2 days after a New York appeals court extended the deadline for his bail to comply with a judgment in a civil fraud case, cutting the bail amount by 61%. Happy Easter. Let us get America praying again, Trump wrote. As we prepare for Good Friday and Easter, I encourage you to pick up a copy of the God Bless the USA Bible. The Bible is inspired by God Bless the USA, the patriotic hymn by Lee Greenwood that has been heard at many Trump rallies and has a long political history dating back to Ronald Reagan. It is the only Bible endorsed by both Trump and Greenwood, the promotional website says. The Bible is only available online and costs $59.99, much more expensive than the traditional Bibles sold in large retail shops or the ones available for free at many churches and hotels. It includes Greenwood's handwritten refrain of the song that gives it its title, as well as copies of historical documents such as the U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance. Many of you have never read these documents and do not know what freedoms and rights you have as Americans and how threatened you are to lose those rights, Trump said in a 3-minute promotional video. Religion and Christianity are the biggest things that are missing in this country, and I really believe that we have to bring them back, and we have to bring them back fast, Trump said. Christianity is an increasingly important part of his campaign. Donald Trump has been courting Christian supporters since his 2016 presidential campaign and remains popular with white evangelicals despite his numerous divorces, insults to marginalized groups, and allegations of extramarital affairs and sexual assault. And his narrative of persecution, also in court, seems to resonate with his many Christian supporters. Trump said in his promotional video that he has many Bibles at home. It is my favorite book, Trump said, echoing a comment he has made in previous years. It is the favorite book of many human beings. Trump's sales pitch focuses on bringing religion back to America. I want a lot of human beings to have it, he said at one point in a 3-minute promotional video interview. You have to have the Bible for your heart and soul. However, many are wondering whether Trump is trying to achieve something else with his Bible sales in the face of increasing financial pressure.
There's probably nothing to say about this because Jose's words already say what is necessary, as the pictures themselves also speak. But if you do not have anything else, then I would like to talk to you and Quetzal about, however, we will not.
That is okay, but I should probably wear other clothes and also shoes.
That will not be necessary because, and here he comes.